Alright, today I'll be refuting Chantal Foylet's argument. Her claim being, the claim I'm responding to, is that in this day and age, making cursive writing mandatory in elementary schools is useless. Her secondary claims that I'll be following are that computers in the classroom are replacing the pen and paper, and secondly, that more emphasis is placed on more emphasis is placed on teaching our kids technical writing skills rather than penmanship. The evidence that I found that I challenged in the first argument, that computers in the classroom are replacing the pen and paper, is that her first evidence was a Newsweek article by Megan Downs in 2009 that states that cursive is already widely taught in all 50 states. Secondly, that she stated that professionalism is now based on keyboard, words per minute, instead of the beauty and the stroke of the individual letters. Computers in the classroom. There's no evidence that professionalism is now based on words per minute. It all depends on the career. I found that it all depends on the career that you choose to go into. Keyboard replacing any type of print or cursive, you might as well why not just teach typing? So throwing out cursive is like throwing out half of what makes our writing style. Reasoning, so why teach writing at all when you can do this? Why would you discontinue this? From her justification in the very beginning of her argument, it came from elementary school kids. But what elementary school kids like to learn or like to do their homework? So coming out and saying that something is stupid or that they hate writing, not necessarily helps that argument. Writing is a skill that is slowly being lost, and I'll go into that later. My counterclaim for this is that cursive must continue to be taught because it's an essential skill in our daily lives as well as a connection to our past, such as reading historical documents in school or in our daily lives. Using it, your signature is one of your most personal identifications. Knowing how to read it just is very beneficial in all aspects. The secondary claim that I'll be responding to is that more emphasis is placed on teaching our kids technical writing skills rather than penmanship. There's no evidence or citation of where her statement of instruction has decreased from 1 hour to 15 minutes a day in the classrooms. I thought that this should be structured in the first supporting claim. My recent challenges that agreed. I agreed with her supporting claim that writing correctly verbally, the structure of a sentence is more important than any format. Back to what I said I replied to was that according to College Board, she brought up the SAT, and that College Board reported 15% of students wrote the SAT in cursive. Only 15. The other 85 printed their essay all in print. All 15% of those scored above those who printed their essays. Lastly, my counterclaims were that more emphasis on cursive will raise test scores and increase literacy comprehension. So if in schools, instead of trying to withdraw cursive writing, if we can teach cursive to the point that students understand it more, and if it's a problem with messy handwriting or not, teaching it better so that they can write it better, then it should not be a problem. Also, what I came across when researching this was that in other countries, such as the Asian countries who score higher above us and then come here for a higher education, was that, such as Japan was my biggest example, has 3 different types of writing. They go from kanji to katakana and hiragana. And above those, they're all mandatory to learn in elementary school and used throughout for the rest of their lives in daily signposting, anything. And they have no problem, and yet their test scores come out higher. So in daily life, I find that this is more useful. So thank you.
All right, Anthony, at the beginning you've labeled the claim and supporting points clearly. You're signposting as you get to the two main points, so that's good. But it wasn't very clear to me what the point was you were making when you got to that first point. In fact, it just seemed like you were repeating the quote that the advocate used, and it didn't go much further than that. There was some discussion of writing style, but I couldn't really follow what your analysis was on that point. It sounded a little bit like you were spinning your wheels. You need some declarative sentences in there and some evidence to back up those points. I did catch that there was a challenge to using kids as a source of evidence, asking kids their opinion about something that they're learning, that may not be all that productive, because anything that's hard the kids aren't going to like. I thought I understood that argument. The phrasing probably could be clear. The best point that you had on this was the counterclaim, because it's pretty clearly stated that there's a need for cursive, for instance, in the use of your signature or the ability to read historical documents. That might also be important. I would suspect that there will continue to be cursive writing used or handwriting used by people who, even though they might operate in a professional environment, still do this kind of thing. For instance, I'm not typing your stuff as you are giving your presentations, and I'm sure everybody here would wish I could use cursive writing as they read my comments. On the second point, I thought you had a label that was okay on this. The challenge to the evidence, though, is just an idea that it should be in the first point. I don't know how that undermines the validity of that evidence. Now, you did have something from the College Board that seemed to be a reference to the evidence that the advocate used that I thought was interesting. It sounded like you were saying the 15% who did use cursive actually scored higher on the test. Well, all of a sudden that would give us a reason to believe that cursive writing does have some value, and if that's the evidence that the advocate used, they're undermining their own point. If it's evidence that you found, you need to tell us where you found it and be more specific about that. The same thing with the Japanese types of writing. I thought you had an okay explanation of what they had to learn. We could use some background data on how extensively they teach that, just a little quote about what the Japanese education system is like and these three styles of writing that they teach, and then let's get some of those numbers about how they're beating the crap out of us in terms of other things, instead of just asserting it, which I think people generally believe is probably true, but it wouldn't hurt you to have some documentation on it. All right, thank you.
Professor?